Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldscythe. I read outloud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will be continuing reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party by Aeolian Sands, Chapter 28. Negotiations. Fëanor let himself be led away. They would never make it back to Onderlinde anyway. Maeglin was right to fear the woods. Even as the younger lords had been jumping out of the river to seize them, Fëanor had seen the dark eyes on the opposite bank. Somewhat strange that none of the others had picked up on it. Fingolfin and Garanthin had been constantly aware of their surroundings. Perhaps living in a gated city dulls one's senses. Fëanor considered for a brief moment letting their tracker find the way to Gondolin. It would certainly distract Morgoth, and any focused attack on Turgon City would leave the enemy vulnerable to a counterattack from the other Noldor strongholds. However, when Fëanor eyed Maeglin walking dejectedly between Roga and Ecthelion, he felt an unexplainable sorrow. No, I must not hurt my family further. He and Glorfindel were in the back of the group, the blonde elf holding on to one of Fëanor's arms to keep him from fleeing. Glorfindel, Fëanor turned, and whispered into his ear, "We have an admirer who follows us." Glorfindel stiffened. After a brief pause, he let go of Fëanor and whirled, hand going to his sword. Fëanor turned as well, but there was nothing there. They stood still for several seconds, but still no fell creature emerged from the forest. Fëanor looked back ahead to see that the others were looking at them. "What was it?" Rock whispered. Dark eyes peering from across the water. Fëanor answered, "We cannot go back. They will follow, and we will doom all who live in the city." Rock immediately looked up and scanned the treetops. Then he tensed and swung his hammer in front of him. There was a flutter of wings, and then a black bat landed on the ground. At once it seemed to disintegrate into a pile of ash, only to rise again as a pale woman in a black cloak. "Rogue, it had been a long time," she purred, fangs glistening as they caught the beams of light that filtered through the trees. "Turingwetil, why are you here?" "I returned from Talingaurath to find Myron gone. It's so unlike him to not keep me informed. Should it be amiss to say that I'm worried?" She took a long stride forward, cloak dragging in the ground. Fëanor could now see that it was made of black wings. "And now I see Fëanor, crafter of the Silmarilli, walking the earth with 4 lords no one has seen or heard from in several centuries. It seems as if my intuition can be trusted. Something has happened. So tell me, scarred little elf, why so many disappearances and appearances in one swath of land?" Ecthelion's hand went to his blade, but Rog stayed him and answered, "Yeah, I know where that pompous little torture-loving Umaya is. But why would I tell you? What can you offer me in return?" The Herald of Sauron snarled. "Would you prefer it if I ripped your throat out?" "The dead sing no songs, and I know your black heart. It beats in a jealous pool of black blood. Tell me, is that Dark Lord concerned for his so-called lieutenant? Yet Sauron adores him like a puppy, loving a hateful master, and spares no thought for you." The Umaya unfurled those black wings to reveal wicked claws. She approached Rog, and then ran a spidery appendage beneath his jaw. He did not flinch, even as the rest of the party tensed. "You speak of things you do not know," she said coolly. Rog laughed. "A couple of centuries in Angband taught me plenty. I know you have a soft, rotten spot for your master, and a simmering hatred for his master. Sauron devotes all his time in the service of Morgoth, and hardly ever sees you. Don't tell me I'm wrong. I might not be a holy being, but I have eyes." The tension in the air was rapidly reaching a boiling point. Fëanor elbowed Glorfindel. "Free me, you dunce! This reckless idiot is going to get us all killed." "Says Lord Get Thee Gone himself. Are you sure Rog isn't a lost son of yours? He almost has Ambrosia's hair in a certain light. Ow! He grunted when Fëanor elbowed him between the ribs. Fëanor turned to see if the vampire bat lady had heard. His heart skipped a beat. She was standing there, claws curled in front of her and staring straight into him. She seemed to be deep in thought. You will never make it out of the first tunnel. Good news for you, then, Rog said. Thuringwethil then smiled her fanged grin once more. All right, elf. I will bite. Tell me where Myron is, and I will tell you the closest entrance into Angamanda. Rog's eyes shone with mischief. Agreed, but how can I trust you to keep your word? Thuringwethil reached out as fast as fire and grabbed Maeglin. The young elf fought back and attempted to stomp on her foot, but a clawed hand and his neck stilled him. I will speak first. If you do not tell me, I will slay this child and drink his blood. Oh, but Rog nearly leapt to Maeglin's rescue, but Rog flung his hammer out to stop them. He nodded at the Umayyad to continue. She did. You will find the way into the fortress of the Dark Lord of Arda, via a tunnel that has its exit in the headwaters of the northern river that feeds Lake Mithrim. You, Fëanor of the Silmarili, ought to have realized this. Gothmog used these tunnels against you in the so-called Dagar Nuin Gileath. They are remarkably close to the Noldorin keep of Barad Eithel. Fëanor wanted to ask why. If this was true, Morgoth had never used them to attack Fingolfin and break the siege earlier, but one look at Maeglin frozen in the creature's grasp made him hold his tongue. Rog nodded and then spoke his turn. And your master, who calls himself Myron, fought Eonwe and lost. He was taken to the Hold of Mandos. If you journey there, you shall find him. On hearing the news, the Umayyad gave a horrible screech that cut the still air. Fëanor couldn't take it anymore. He made to leap at the Dark Servant, bound hands and all, but Ecthelion was faster. The Lord of the Fountain threw his sword straight at Thuringwethil's neck, but before it could find its mark, the Herald of Sauron shape-shifted into a great bat and flew above their heads, Maeglin's body grasping its talons. The Councillor of Gondolin screamed and fought to free himself, but the bat's grip was unyielding. Treachery! Deceit! Thuringwethil wailed, and she looked about to break the back of the struggling elf in her claws. No! Fëanor yelled, and he yanked Glorfindel's knife out of its sheath, flinging it with both hands at the vampire. It wasn't even close to hitting her. I told you the truth! Rog shouted. So what if your precious, torture-loving friend is out of your reach? You think I can just waltz into Angband? But the bat had already flown off, Maeglin's shout still ringing in the air. Fëanor turned at Rog with fire in his glance. You! The Sinda held up his hands. Calm yourself. He reached for a knife in his boot and cut Fëanor's bonds. Even if the forest wasn't full of fell things, we can't return now, Ecthelion spoke quietly. Turgon will throw us from the ramparts for getting his nephew captured. Because some fool traded him for a tunnel that may or may not exist, Fëanor shouted. Like Madras traded his freedom for a chance to get a Silmaril? How about my dear friend Eilonwe, who traded her life to follow you? Glorfindel said. You are actually getting what you wanted. Now, instead of rotting in a root cellar, listening to Egelmoth's small talk, you have an actual chance at getting into Angamanda. Storming the gates was never going to work. Do you know what they do you in that iron hell? I do, Rock said with a stern countenance. I do, and this is why we cannot waste time fighting over each other's sins. If it weren't for me, then maybe Thuringwethil wouldn't have taken him. But if it weren't for Fëanor, Maeglin would never have been out here. In fact, if it were not you and your Silmarils, then none of the Noldor would be here at all. Fëanor seemed to deflate. I know it, he hissed. I'm trying to fix it. Then stop looking backward and fix it, Rock proclaimed. He slung his hammer over his shoulders. Then he laughed coldly. This will be the march for the minstrels to sing about. Fantastic, Ecthelion muttered as he picked up his fallen sword. We should make for Barad Eithel first. Hiking Fingon would give us some horses and updated maps, suggested Glorfindel. I can give you what? A light, happy voice asked. The elves turned around to see High King looking over the shoulder of a lady in white as their horse trotted up to them. Larafindala? Ecthelion? Rog? You left the city? A feminine voice asked with notes of awe in it. Then Aranhel's grey eyes settled on the swords at Ecthelion's side. Ecthelion, I have never known you to wield two blades, only Kano and Lalawende, and the sheath on your right as black as the night, but you always wear silver and blue. My lady, Ecthelion bowed. When Feanor returned, I thought it was some ill-fated escape on his part. I did not know you likewise returned. I have come to see my son. Where is he, and why do you have his blade? You have arrived too late, Lady Irise, Rock answered. Councillor Maeglin had been captured by Moringotta. The four of us are going after him. No, Fingon whispered. Aradhel said nothing. She leapt off her horse, handing the reins to her brother. She strode to Ecthelion, who handed her Maeglin's sword. Without speaking, she secured it to her belt beside her own. Finna, go find our brother, she ordered stiffly. Tell him my son has been taken and that I will get him back, even if Varda's stars fall and the earth sinks into the sea. Aradhel eyed Feanor then, eyes simmering with hatred. I am not even going to ask. Rock cleared his throat. It was not him. Feanor here nearly tackled an Umaya with bound hands and no weapons just to get your son back. Ha! Sorry, but I have a hard time believing that. When I remember arriving here, we find only one Ambarosa instead of two. When I went to Mandos and saw Tewa with burn scars on his very face. For a moment, Feanor wanted to run to be on his own again. Enough with this forsaken family. He didn't need to prove himself. He didn't need their help or their condemnation. He just needed to defeat Morgoth and save his grandnephew and his sons. But he found his feet rooted to the spot. He grabbed his niece's elbow and spun her to face him. Grey eyes met grey eyes. I too want to rescue Lomion. I want to rescue my own sons. You are not the only grieving parent here. He spoke to her in low, grave tones. Aradhel stared at him for several seconds, and her gaze was like ice. At least she released him. All right, she said. All right. She turned to look at Fingon, who was still seated on his horse, looking very much bewildered. He tensed when he noticed Feanor eyeing the crown. There was a time I would have killed the son of Nolofinwe for daring to wear that circlet, but what use I have for such trinkets in Angamando? It fits you well, Findakano, and it is the least of what you deserve for saving Nelia from his torment. Feanor gave a short, curt bow. Wear it well, Noldoran. Take it and advise your brother to be ready. If this quest shall fail, we will need the armies of Ondalind. Then he turned and raised his sword. To the north! He shouted, and while no one echoed his cry, Rogd cracked a smile, Ecthelion shook his head, and Glorfindel rolled his eyes. Having met the Nolofinwes in the northern reaches of Brethil, from which Aradhel and Fingon crossed the Sirion at the fords of Britiuk and looped back to the north towards the Hidden Way, Luthien and Midras were now journeying through the high plains in a southwesterly direction towards crossings of Teaglin. I'm glad you decided to turn south for Nargothrond instead of going to Hithlum, Luthien said from behind the red-haired Feanorian as they rode double on Fingon's horse. Midras turned his head slightly to glance at her through the corner of his eye, his only hand still on the reins to guide Lule. Well, Findakano is not wrong. If you ever lose someone, chances are good that Findarada has already found them. There's little use going north in any case, now that we already met the king on the road. Luthien hummed her agreement, then looked out across the plains of grass that sparkled gold in the rays of Arien. It was incredible to see so far. At home, the great trees had always limited her sight, but here it was as if she could see to the ends of the earth. The northern peaks of Eret Wethrun and Eret Gorgoroth seemed to kiss in the distance behind her, and ahead there was nothing but oceans of grassland, save for the east, where the solemn trees of Brethil rose like silent sentries over a sleeping world. Except it was not sleeping. Far from it. Luthien could hear the blades of grass rustle and whisper, singing softly to each other. In the skies above, she would catch a cry of a hawk in flight, and occasionally hear the lazy slithering of a snake looking for a place in the sun. The world was alive if only one knew how to listen, Quietly, Luthien began to sing her own tune as it came to her. Walking at day along the meadow way, the trees and stars say la la lay, as we walk along the meadow way. Madras seemed to stiffen a bit. He stopped the mare and glanced about them. What is it? Luthien whispered, stopping her song. Storm is coming. She cocked her head and listened to the winds. Sure enough, she felt it. A faint echo of a murmur of a song from the north wind, whispering promise of rain and thunder. But she was certain that the Nolda could not hear such music. How can you tell? She asked with genuine curiosity. Was Maglor not the only Noldo able to hear the song of Ea? Madra smiled slyly. Prisoners are said to know every crack and fracture in their cells, but near the end, my cell had no ceiling save the sky. She marveled at the thought. Perhaps the elf beside her did not hear the north wind sing, but he could feel it. He who had spent so long under the unforgiving sky that he had somehow learned its wants and whims. In this respect, he far outclassed herself, for Luthien could not remember a time when she had glanced up to see such endless horizons. Always her view had been of the green canopies or snow-dusted limbs. I have never seen the sky before. Not like this, she admitted, shuddering in the breeze. I know the birch trees and the moss and the birds as well as my own self, but out here it is wild and the wind gallops unhindered. There is a little cover or shelter to seek should that storm overtake us. Yes, when the lightning strikes and the hail comes, there are no trees to protect you, Madras agreed. Yet, did you know that Lula here is the filly of Rokalor, who ran like the very stallion of Oromed to smite the gates of hell? Vina would claim that she could outrun any storm, but sometimes I wonder. She hasn't exactly proven to be any different than any ordinary horse. Before Luthien could respond, she saw the mare's ears peek straight up at the insult to her pride. Oh no. She instinctively reached for Madras and held on to his waist just in time to keep herself from falling when Lula leapt, bound, and determined to prove herself the true filly of Rokalor. Was this really necessary? Luthien thought, but just as fast as the thought came, it left, abandoned in the dust behind them. A cold wind whipped their hair, and the grass blurred beneath them as they galloped south. When they crested a small hill and leapt down the opposite side, Luthien felt her stomach drop. She squealed at the foreign feeling. This must be what it feels like to fly. Lule, you have wings! She laughed, and her eyes were bright with tears from the wind. Lule seemed to delight in her words, and she sped all the faster across the highland grasses. If any orc saw them, none dared step in their way. Andreth was wondering just how stupid the Valar thought she was if two of them dared to show up in front of her and claim to be a man and an elf. One at least had a pretty decent disguise. Only the depths of his eyes gave him away. Well, the eyes and the fact that he was traveling with a Feanorian that wasn't even supposed to exist. But the other one, the one who had shown up in a long purple cloak and had stood 12 feet tall before downsizing to a more normal height, yes, she had seen him despite the cute little attempt at distraction via wind gust, was definitely clueless. Then the other had given him the name of Nama. Really? Just how dense she was supposed to be? Just because her body was frail did not mean that her mind was any less sharp. Well, it might just be the time to prove herself. Lord Círdan is not home, she declared, walking back from the guardsmen to where she had left the two Vala and one Feanorian waiting in the palace courtyard. Where is he? Namo asked. The guard said he went to supervise the launching of a new boat. You know, Andreth said, her blue eyes gleaming, boat launching can be very dangerous. I'm sure Lord Círdan will be all right, the one called Arthur spoke. We can wait here for his return. Of course, but I think all three of us should say a prayer for his safety. As men and women, we usually pray directly to Eru, but I know the elves pray often to Elbereth, who they also call Varda, Queen of the Stars. Let's ask her to watch over Círdan and also to bless our meeting. I have a feeling us four have all the right ingredients to make the closest of friends, like butter, flour, egg, and milk combined to make the perfect biscuit, she announced, fully embracing her innocent grandmotherly tone. And yes, it was true that she made the best biscuits around. The silver-haired elf named Namo paled considerably. "Let's not tell Varda about us," he said.
"Nonsense! Don't be the rotten egg in this recipe. It is good for new friendships to be blessed."
Gil-galad just looked unsure. Arthur was amused, which was surprising, but Andreth had her fish caught in the hook. All that was left was to reel him in. She sat down on the grass of the courtyard. "Dearest Varda, servant of Eru Iluvadar, who is the creator and most holy one." No, Nama said, and 2 hands were on her, pulling her up. Andreth cracked one eye open. "No, rotten egg?" "There's no need," Nama replied, a blush going to his cheeks.
"Why not, Nama?"
she said, and once putting steel in her tone.
"Is it perhaps because she doesn't know that you are here? At least not yet. I am sure it doesn't take her much effort to find you even from afar."
"How do you know this?" Nama asked, looking around like a lost kitten.
"Because I possess half a wit. Look, Lord Namo, and whoever you're supposed to be, Arthur, I don't care what you're doing here, although by the looks of things, it must be quite the story. Still, I have lived long and lonely life, and I have not found much happiness in it. Biscuits can only go so far to make things better. I have many days left, so if I have no choice but to grab the Balrog by its horns, then I will."
"Whatever for?" Arthur asked gently. "Soon you will be given the gift of men. You are not bound to this world, even as we were bound when we came to live within it."
"I am faithful to Eru, but I could never enjoy his gift if I'm forced to leave my love forever behind. It is a torment I shall endure no longer. A lifetime alone is quite long enough."
"What?" Namo asked, clearly out of his depths. Andreth decided to explain things simply for him.
"Lady Vida is your wife, correct? Now say, when you came to Ea, she was prohibited to come. What would you have done?"
Namo was silent. I would have stayed with her."
"Yes, but say you had no choice. You were forced to go, to abandon her for all eternity. Would not even your heart be broken? Is she not your comfort and your strength, your adviser and your dearest friend? And saying, knowing what a doom awaited, she turned you away? Would you be so delighted to go to Ea to walk the green earth alone?"
Namo was quiet.
"Maybe even the Ainu can fade. Perhaps you would have faded alone and unloved without Vida at your side. This is the torment I have been forced to endure. Yet I have not faded. I still hold hope, and now I see that my chance has come. Rewrite my doom, Mandos. Take away this dying body, and make me one of the Eldar."
"I cannot."
"You can. I know you can, because I give up my gift freely, and it is mine to give. If I were forced to accept, then it would not be a gift. I have prayed long and hard about this, and I know I am right. Take this gift of men. Bind me to this world like my beloved is bound," she declared without hesitation. "Do this for me, and I will not tell Varda about this escapade. And what is more, you will have ended the agony of life spent alone."
Namo looked at her in clear amazement. Gil-galad cleared his throat. I do not understand. But I do know that one should never be alone. Andreth, I can be your friend." At last, Nama sighed. "All right. I will try." He stepped forward and placed his palm on Andreth's head. He began speaking in soft Valarin. The next thing Andreth knew, she was waking up on a grassy lawn on the courtyard of Egalrest. The half-elven boy named Gil-galad was staring at her in awe. She sat up, and her bones did not creak in protest. She looked down at her fair arms, and there was not a single wrinkle or mark. Long honey-brown hair cascaded down her shoulders. She stood and noticed with curiosity that she could read the inscription on the fountain across the lawns. Then a smile brighter than all the stars of the sky showed across her face, and she leapt at Namo and the Fenarian child who had offered to be her friend, and the mysterious man with 2 deep eyes, and hugged them all. She hugged them fiercely and did not let go. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't tell Varda about any of this. I will help Gilgalad get to Kirtan. Then I shall find my way to my love across the sea and wait for his return from your halls." "You speak of fair Aikanaro? He is here, Lady Andreth. He was just re-embodied a couple of days ago. I would go to Nargothrond to find him." The second hug was so strong that Namo's back cracked. The now young and elven Andreth then grabbed Gilgalad's hand. "To the docks. Now we must go. Kirtan will be there, and then I must be off to meet my heart's only love." Then the 2 of them raced off, leaving Namo and Ulmo bewildered and standing alone amongst the fountains of Egalrest. Thuringwithil flew too high and too fast. Her elven prisoner had already fainted in her grasp from the lack of oxygen. She wasn't worried. The dark-haired Noldo would surely live, as long as the Vala came to their senses. Glancing down at the waves below, she at once feared a great wave would snatch her out of the sky. She didn't have the time nor the care to learn the newest rules from Smock Taniquatil, but she was pretty sure that she wasn't allowed west. So be it. They could smite her out of the sky and kill this young prince too. But Ulmo must have been looking elsewhere, because she crossed without the lightning and storm waves to take her down. She was all but across the Peloris when Eonwa flew in front of her, sword brandished.
"Greetings, older brother," she cooed. "How is life as a trader?"
"I am no brother of yours," he answered coolly.
"Oh, but you were,"
she laughed, hovering on her great bat wings.
"It was you and me and Myron, us 3 who alone understood how to live instead of merely existing. Don't you remember?"
She thrust ancient memories at him, driving them into his mind. Scenes of 2 of them flying down Aula's stone halls to grab Myron and force him from his work, of Myron presenting them with swords of silver mithril, of Enwa teaching them how to fight. "I remember," the white-winged herald replied. "I remember one summer day having the rather foolish idea that I wanted to try skiing on water. It would have been fun, I thought. One of us could fly and pull the skier through the waves. I ran into Myron's house to find him gone, and you standing there with a dagger in hand."
"Brother, Manwë does not care for you, just as Aula hardly remembers Myron's name, and Vida wouldn't blink if I presented her with a cloak of stealth this night. We leave to follow Melkor. Come with us."
"Has he seduced you with lies? Melkor is a deceiver, a torturer. Come to your senses." But you did not come to your senses. The next thing I knew, my sister's knife was in my breast and my blood was spilling over the floor of my friend's house. Yet you called me a traitor.
"Fair enough," Thuringwithil acknowledged. "Slave would be a better term. Manwë has enthralled you in both thought and body. Though I have come to realize Melkor a little better, it is time we forget this naive idea of service. I have come to take Myron so that together we can live free from all masters."
"The freedom you speak of is false. You will always serve something, even if it is to slave to your own selfish desires."
"Spoken like a true thrall." "Out of my way, Eonwa!"
she declared, producing the same dagger she had used against him so long ago. "Will you stab me again?"
"No,"
Thuringwithil replied. Then she held it at Michaelin's throat.
"Prevent me from seeing Myron, and I will slay this boy, then fly straight to Melkor and tell him the location of the secret city from whence this whelp came. The blood of thousands will be on your hands."
"The Noldor are already doomed."
"Oh, but I thought you served a higher purpose. Something about nobility and honor and saving the children or something."
She moved the knife closer to the elf's throat. Enwa did not speak for a moment. "Typical bird brain taking too long to process a thought," Myron's voice echoed in Thuringwithil's mind. Then, almost to her surprise, he nodded. All right. Set Michaeling down, and swear on Myron's life never to reveal the location of Gondolin to anyone. If you do this, I, in turn, swear that I will take you to Mandos, where you will find that fiend, and I will unlock the doors and stand aside.
I swear on Myron's life never to tell any of Gondolin, she said without hesitating. Then she smiled. This will be just like old times. Oh, I do hope Manwë doesn't cut your wings off next time he sees you.
Then she glided to the earth, lay the unconscious elf on the grass, and raised back up to her brother. He stared at her with deep turquoise eyes. Then the two of them were racing westward through the skies of Aman. Manwë might very well take his wings next time he saw him, but Eonwë was not the fool Thori seemed to believe. With Myron's powers bound, he had said nothing about releasing them, and Thorin to distract him from returning to Morgoth, he had lost nothing in this agreement. Sauron brooding alone in Mandos was as much of a liability as Fëanor brooding in Mandos had been, and look how well that had turned out. Thorin to distract him with her ridiculous notions of freedom was the only weapon in Eowyn's hand. Did she really believe that Myron thought the same? He is even more dutiful a servant than I am. If he weren't to serve Melkor, he would serve some distorted idea of his perfect world. He could not stand to be idle in a distant land. Ah, but you have always loved him, sister. It is unrequited, but even so, love must truly be blinding if you cannot see his true nature after all these years. Still, Eonwë was in a good mood. His wounds had healed, and as evil as she had become, he felt the shadow of old times to be flying next to his sister. Some of his old mischief bubbled precariously near the surface. Say, Thori, he said, rolling to glide on his back and look up from just beneath her. Are you still as slow as I remember? He then flipped over to be flying above her and beat the air with swift strokes of his wings. She was already almost too far back for him to hear her indignant squawk.
Bird brain! Everyone knows that feathers are slow as oozing tar.
Then she was speeding after him like a literal bat out of hell. Eonwë chuckled and banked high in the sky, diving to fly at her side again. All right, let's make this fair. On a count of 3, first of us to Mandos will stand victorious. 1, 2... He hadn't even gotten to 3 when Thori was off like a shot. He followed her stroke for stroke, their hair streaming in the wind and sun glistening on their wings and skin. Far below them, the forests and grasslands passed in a blur. Those claws look like they cause a lot of drag, Eonwë taunted, but he was panting now. Perhaps he wasn't as healed as he had believed.
If you have the energy to spare, then perhaps don't fly like a geriatric old man,
Thorin answered as she pulled ahead. Eonwë fought a bit in the turbulence of the air behind his sister's wake, steadied himself, then rose higher. Already the grey structure of Mandos loomed before them. Thorin saw what he was doing and attempted to cut him off by also flying higher. Soon they were both stubbornly ascending, neither wishing to give altitude. I don't think Arryn wants to see us that badly, Eonwë yelled as he felt the air grow thin. This fauna wasn't really made for such altitudes. Thorin sniggered. Your loss! Then she folded her wings and fell like a rock. Eonwë did not miss a beat, and soon he was beside her once more, both in free fall. He looked at her and smirked, then reached out slowly with one wing and slapped her on the head. Thorin screeched that she was temporarily knocked off balance, then launched herself at him. The two of them began grappling in the air as they hurtled towards the roof of Nama's halls.
Do you have a death wish? She screamed.
Well, this form of yours is hideous. I might just want to free you from it, he answered, and she grasped his collar. At barely 300 feet above the roof, she let go. Eonwë snapped his own wings out and winced at the pain as they caught the air. He looked behind him to see Thorin gliding slightly above him. I am not losing to a mad sister. He dove once more and was on the roof of Mandos within seconds. Myron was laying in his cell in Mandos, bored out of his mind. It would have been better if Nama had allowed some of the elven fare near him, But of course he had been restricted to solitary confinement. In the beginning, he had focused on trying to break the spiritual bounds Eanwe, the fool, had placed on him to prevent him from accessing his power or shapeshifting. But each attempt gave him a greater and greater headache till he feared that he might actually kill himself. Myron wasn't totally sure what would happen if he would die like this, and he decided that he very much did not want to find out. Then he had entertained himself with the thoughts of how he would torture both Eanwe and Fëanor if he ever got out. And while those dreams were delicious, they also bored him after a while. One could only dismember another in so many ways. Humiliation offered more opportunity for creativity, but still he found the promise of revenge to lose its flavor after a while. So now he had turned his mind to more physical task of trying to remove the shackles from his ankles. It really was unnecessary to keep him physically bound if they had already such a great job of doing it spiritually, but at least it gave him something to do. He could feasibly break his ankles to free himself, but that would hobble him even more effectively than the chains, and Namo would most definitely laugh. No, that was stupidity on Gothmog levels, and he couldn't believe that the thought had even occurred to him. The shackles appeared to be made of simple iron, but even if he had a forge, he still wasn't sure if this fauna could withstand the heat. Usually it would, but that was before Eanwe informed him that he was now like a man. From his experience with men, he burned rather easily. What was he supposed to do with a fauna that burned? Did they not see how that would hinder his work? Of course they did, that's the whole point. He clawed at the shackles, not caring for the blood that seeped from beneath his nails. Oh dear, he has lost his last gem. Myron looked up at that familiar voice and hissed. Interesting choice. To chain the ankles but leave the arms free. Are you hoping to see me crawl out of here? I wasn't thinking of it, but now that you mention the idea, it would be a sight to behold, Eanwe answered. Then, to Myron's utter shock, Eanwe actually opened the cell door. Myron tried to leap to his feet, only to stumble and fall, bracing himself for the pain of hitting hard stone with his seemingly mortal shoulder, and more so for the humiliation of being at Eanwe's feet, again. Myron waited for the impact that never came. Soft arms had caught him. Opening his eyes he hadn't realized he had closed. He looked up to see Thuri holding him, her invisibility cloak around her shoulders. You are late, he grumbled at her. She promptly let him fall the last 2 feet. Ow, he said. Thuri lightly kicked him. A little gratitude would be nice, she said. Sitting up and using his hands as support, Myron looked at the 2 siblings before him. It had been countless millennia since he had last seen them together, and the similarities in the fauna they chose struck him. They had the same pale skin and sharp jawlines. What sort of twisted reunion is this? He growled. Eanwe agreed to help you escape. I agreed to stand aside, he corrected. Little difference, Thoringwethil snapped, although Myron knew absolutely it was not. What did you give him? It doesn't matter. It does. We call him Birdbrain, but you know as well as I that he has his wise moments. Would you rather I leave you in here? Speaking of which, come on, we need to leave before Mundus looks this way. I am not crawling. No, you fool. Are you so vain that you can't abandon this body for 2 seconds? Ask your new partner in crime. I had to bind him in this form, Eanwe explained. It should not be so unfamiliar concept to you. After all, do you not do the same to the Valaraukar? Thoringwethil's eyes went wide and her fangs grew. Release him, she demanded. No, there are consequences to our actions. Release him or I will... But her voice faltered as she remembered what she had sworn. Eanwe winked. You think you would have learned the danger of oaths by now, fair sister? Then he bent down and freed the other fallen Maya. What do you swear? Myron demanded as he stood at last. I know where Gondolin, the city of Turgon, is, but I cannot tell you, nor anyone. This I swore on your life. Myron stood shocked. He was ashamed that his first thought was that Melkor must never know, for he might just be angry enough to gladly trade Maidan for Turgon city. Then he recalled that he had been to Gondolin himself. "It's all right. I know where it is," he answered. "I do think I might wish to be a hawk in the rafters for this," Eonwë spoke. "I want to see you tell Melkor all about your failures, and how your usefulness has come to an end." Maidan flinched, then smiled cruelly. "You and I are not that different, Eonwë. Replace Melkor with Manwë, and that same line could have come out of my own mouth." Eonwë shrugged. "Perhaps, but unlike you, I'll still try and fight the dark. I bid thee go. Go and flee to the far south, or let Melkor kill you in this mortal body. He surely will. If not today, then a year or 10 years from now. I know how he treats you, and I know why you are so skilled at shapeshifting. But there is no other fauna now. Protect this one and flee south. Thuri wishes to go there anyway. Go and reflect on all of you've done." And with that, Eonwë was gone. End of chapter 28. Stay tuned.